Welcome to the Rise Together podcast weekly hot take series. Every week, we're going to bring you powerful stories and strategies from leaders who are making a real impact by building stronger, more resilient communities. Get ready to be inspired, motivated, and equipped with the tools to thrive in both your personal and professional life.
Hi, everybody. This is Beth Almaris with the Foundation for Family and Community Healing. We are a small nonprofit that's really passionate about helping individuals and organizations build strength and resilience through skill-based education and leadership development. And speaking of leadership development, I have a great guest today, Aaron Listhaus, who is an actual leadership coach. How are you doing today, Aaron?
Hi, everyone. I'm well. Thank you.
Great. Well, I love having a leadership coach on because we talk so much about leadership development. So why don't you tell us how you got into coaching?
Sure. So I started out my career as a public educator, classroom teacher, and worked my way up into leadership positions through that way. And I always worked in schools where we cared more than just the intellectual life of children, but also their emotional life, their emotional and social development. And so that created for me just a very deep interest in understanding people in the whole and what they, what comes across when you meet them and what is perhaps not visible when you meet them in terms of their history and their background and things like that. And when I was a school leader and held other leadership positions in districts and nonprofits, one of the things that always struck me was that we were in the business of helping people do better than where they started with, improving on their lives, but we didn't really understand it from their perspective. And so taking the perspective of the people that you're working with really starts you down that road of really looking at besides the sort of facts on the ground, what are the kinds of conditions and dispositions and skills that people need in order to make changes in their lives. And so along the way, I had the benefit of having a coach that really helped me hone my leadership skills and focus on some of the things that I had blind spots about and didn't realize were working against me. And so in 2018, I decided to take a break from all the work that I had been doing and looked for a different kind of opportunity and came across coaching and went to the Telios Leadership Institute in Philadelphia and got my training, got my certificate from the International Federation of Coaches, and began coaching individuals in my network, and then slowly branching out to coaching different kinds of people in different positions in their life, based on where they are and what their needs are.
Great. So when you talk about leadership skills, can you give us all some examples of what you mean by that?
Sure. So leadership skills are the skills you need to master in order to get people to follow along in a particular vision, learn something new, and generally allow you to lead them, right? So if people are going to trust you to lead them to a particular place, they have to know things about you, know things about where you're going, and know things about how you're going to get there. Right. So there are skill sets involved in how to craft and communicate a vision, how to create the conditions for success in terms of culture and processes so that you are bringing people along at a rate that's comfortable for them, that addresses their fears and concerns, that understands the gap between where you want them to be and where they are now, and has a sort of learning plan forward that.
Got
Right.
it.
So people want to know that when they go on a journey with you, they're going to get them where they thought they would go, and you're going to get them there safely and comfortably.
Yeah. And they really are skills, that's not all like inherent in us, especially if we might have gotten to a leadership position because we were subject matter experts or because we had been at an organization for X number of years.
Yeah, that's exactly right. My the way that I got to be a principal was being a good teacher and a good educator. And I will also say that whatever skills I learned to be a good teacher worked perfectly well when I applied them towards adults. But most people, when they make the leap that way, they don't think about those classroom skills that apply to leadership as well, right? And a lot of people walk into a leadership position thinking, really, it's just about making decisions and delegating.
Mm.
But it's so much more than that, particularly if you view leadership as advancing everyone's skill set level and everyone's capacity so that they move on to other things, because all humans crave some kind of professional development and advancement.
Yeah, that's really true. Really interesting. What role do you think leaders have in terms of like the emotional well-being of their employees, their teams? What does that look like?
So, as a leader, you're not responsible for each person's condition as you find them, right?
Sure.
But as a leader, you are responsible for creating an environment where everyone feels a certain level of comfort and safety, where everyone is entitled to and receives the kind of support that they need in order to be successful. Now, for some people, it means um, being a lot more proscriptive in what you want them to do, right? For others, it's understanding that they're at a different level of development, and you can start to collaborate with them on what are the steps that needs to happen, right? There's another level, of course, where you're collaborating on the vision for leadership and the vision for the future as well, right? And so, how you get people to that, right, is by understanding them, what's keeping them where they are, right?
Mhm.
So, coaching, in a sense, is really an exploration of the hidden obstacles that we all have to our own development. And typically speaking, the places where we need to develop are where we have skills that are not as strong as they could be, and they're being shadowed by the overcompensation that happens and the overused skills that we have,
Oh, interesting.
right? So if one of my skills is being very direct in communication, well, you can imagine that that skill works great in some places, but in other places, right, a more laid back and circumspect kind of way of communicating is what's needed, right?
Right.
So it's really about not always using the same tools and understanding that the tools that you use really well are probably masking an area of development for you.
Interesting. And do you think people are too open to learning that?
I think that people get to a place where they understand that the barriers to their success are coming from within the house, right?
Mm.
And they've tried to make changes in their lives over time, haven't been able to do it. They've tried a variety of things, and once you help people to see that they're committed to a certain way of acting for a particular reason, but
Hmm.
that reason may no longer serve them, right? So my approach is to sort of expose the hidden beliefs that people have about why they're using the behaviors that they're using, right? And to then to start to explore, well, do I still believe that about myself or the way the world works? Because oftentimes our beliefs are formulated when we are younger
Hmm.
and far less, um, I'll say, far less capable than we are now, and far less empowered. That's the word I was looking for. And so oftentimes we develop negative opinions about ourselves based on what's happening in our childhood or adolescence or what have you. And we carry them into our adult world without looking to see, I used to not have a lot of confidence. Do I not have confidence now? Do I still need to act in that way? Or I used to need to be a people pleaser. It was very important for people to like me, right? Because in my childhood, that was something that was important for my safety and well being,
Mm.
right? But as an adult, is that habit serving me now, right? Or does it serve me in every area of my life?
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the common themes you're seeing that leaders are facing right now? What are some of the challenges?
Probably the biggest challenge, no surprise to anyone, would be self care and understanding just how to really store up our energies, repair ourselves, restore ourselves, rejuvenate ourselves, feed our souls in some kind of way. It's my experience that reading long form, for example, reading fiction and novels, is a habit that many people used to have and find it hard to cling to. But those moments of looking through the lens of someone else living their lives is really, really important in right placing your perspective about things,
Oh, interesting.
right? Just in terms of, very often we get enraptured by our own stories, and we forget to look through the eyes of people living different stories,
Yeah.
and what that's like, right?
Well, and that couldn't be more important right now, right? As other people's perspectives and having some compassion and empathy and really trying to be open.
That's right. That's right. And the idea that that self care is just as important as taking care of the people around you,
Yeah.
right? And so this whole idea of preventing burnout, right, which is really connected to living your values, because the research on burnout syndrome is really that burnout happens when you're doing things that are counter to your value system on a regular basis,
Yeah.
right? And now we need to really think about, there was for many people in out there in the work world, our places of work matched our values. But that seems to be changing over time, or it changes in different areas and different proportions. And so, how do we adapt to that? And how do we find ways to live out our values that aren't necessarily provided in the workplace, right? But is equally important to our own self-sustaining efforts.
Yeah, I found that in my nonprofit career that the further up the ladder I moved, the more I needed to do volunteer work because I wasn't doing the direct service anymore. I was just going to meetings or doing fundraising or whatever. And I was desperate for that actual connection. And
That's right.
so I started, being an animal shelter volunteer like 20 years ago and still do it. And it's still something that feeds my soul in a way that my jobs just don't.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And understanding the importance to your work that taking care of yourself contributes to,
Yeah, absolutely.
right? And so there's that story of um, two lumberjacks, and one of them just chops wood all day long, and one of them takes an hour in the middle of the day and disappears. And that guy turns out cuts more wood. Why? Because what does he do in that hour? He sharpens his axe.
Oh, I thought he was taking a nap, but axe
Exa-
sharpening is good.
right? and both would accomplish the same thing, perhaps, right? But the sense of, if the sharper your tools are, the more effective they are, and they're sharper when you keep sharpening them.
Yeah. Well, really great stuff. And hopefully, more organizations are looking into leadership development and creating cultures where people really bring their whole selves to work and feel safe and valued, and that they can, work to their values.
That's right. That's right. Probably the one thing I start when I work with leaders is really convincing them that the human side of management is not an add-on to the job, it is the job.
Yeah. Yeah, that must be an eye-opener for folks. Depending on the industry, I suppose.
Yeah. It's never surprising to people, except what's surprising is that they really were approaching it as an add-on.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, Aaron, this has been a great conversation. If folks want to get connected and learn more, where's the best way to find you?
Just find me on LinkedIn, Aaron Listhaus, Executive Coaching. Website's in the making, but that's the easiest place to find me. I'm also on Instagram.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, thanks so much for your time. It was a fun conversation. And thanks to our listeners. I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Bethy.
Thank you for joining us today on our Rise Together podcast weekly hot take series. We hope you've been inspired by today's stories and strategies for building stronger, more resilient communities. Remember, resilience isn't just about bouncing back. It's about growing through every challenge to become bigger and better. If you've enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who could benefit from these insights. Stay connected, stay resilient, and we'll see you next time.